Item number 132, Councilmember Fuentes. Well, before I go to Councilmember, she pulled the item, but before I go to Councilmember Fuentes, I'll recognize Councilmember Vela.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Been working on this item for a while and very excited to move it through. First and foremost, I really want to thank the Austin Police Department, specifically Elise Renshaw, Jonathan Kringen, Assistant City Manager Bruce Mills, and Chief Henderson. We've worked very closely with them to kind of massage the language and get things just right, to understand their processes and work with them in getting this item pass in a way that works within their systems and gets the public the information that they need. I think we've got finally a good draft that meets everyone's needs. Also, I have to thank all the community data experts who provided valuable input on this item and gave it a look and helped us with guidance. Particularly, I want to thank Julio Gonzalez Altamirano, who has worked really, this came from conversations that we have, and he was the one that provided me the first kind of draft of it. I really appreciate his help and his support. This is not a groundbreaking item. Other cities, like Seattle, San Antonio, have excellent publicly available police data dashboards. What we're doing today is we're bringing national best practices to Austin. And this is one of the, I think, the rare public safety items that everyone supports. APD has a backlog of public information requests. Many of them are for exactly this type of data. Having this data publicly available reduces their open records workload. The public wants this information so they can evaluate public safety trends and patterns, and policymakers need this information if we are going to make data-driven public safety decisions. Transparency around public safety is critical for building community trust. While we are releasing public data, we are taking steps to make sure that there is no personally identifiable information within that data. For example, we started out by asking for the block number of all the service calls, but there are small blocks and we didn't want to inadvertently identify anybody, so we switched over to using the census block group instead, which is one of the smallest units that the census measures. Using this measure gives us good granular data without revealing any individually identifiable information. We don't want to reveal the address or specific location of sexual assault victims, mental health calls, and other sensitive information. And then in the recent budget, we funded 4 civilian data positions for APD. These are the positions that will be working to get this data out to the public. So the department should have the resources they need to get that done. All that said, some of the data we are requesting may take longer for APD to provide because of technical or administrative hurdles. We've been discussing that with the department, and I was wondering if there was anyone from the department that could run through some of those areas.
Chief Henderson. And Councilmember, I think we've also appreciate that you've given us till December to come back. When we do identify that there's a need for additional resources, we'll make those as part of your consideration, because there may be resource needs that we don't know yet, but we will know it after this analysis. And we want to be able to have those resources and able to comply with the resolution. Thank
you, City Manager. And I know there may be software purchases that are needed, or there may be additional resources that are needed to get this out, and absolutely we want to support that.
Can I apologize, Chief? It's been called to my attention that on item number 98, which is a public hearing, which I know we have had people signed up to speak on, item number 98 requires 9 votes of the council in order to address it. So item number 98 is going to be postponed until the 21st. And I just want the public to know that. What are you doing?
I think we have the same problem for item 79.
Okay, well, I'll look at that in a minute. Item number 98. Item number 98 will be postponed until the 21st. So if you're waiting to speak, or you're looking forward to speaking, or you've been practicing all morning, we're going to put that off. You got more time to practice. Sorry to interrupt the flow, but I just hate for somebody to be sitting there and then not know about it.
Appreciate that, Mayor. Chief.
You're recognized, Councilmember Vela.
Thank you, Mayor. And Chief, I just wanted to say, and like I said, we've been looking through them. Some of the items are you already have that data, you already recorded it, it shouldn't be that hard. Others, there may be, like I said, technical or administrative problems. I was just wondering if you could discuss some of those.
Yeah, yes, thank you, Councilmember Vella, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of the dais. First, I do want to thank you, Councilmember Vella, for bringing this item forward and understand that APD does value and very much appreciates, first of all, the need and interest for public facing dashboard as it relates to our police operations, and we very much want to fulfill that. We just want to make sure that, first of all, what the requested data is, our interpretation of it is accurate. Therefore, we're delivering the true ask of what's in the item, because sometimes our interpretation of how we read it and then what is actually produced may not align. And so we just want to make sure that we're clear on those. In addition, we also note that there are various operating systems that we have that do not currently communicate with one another. And so they don't naturally draw that information and can align it with the items that are being asked. And that's going to be either manpower heavy or software heavy in order to produce those items. In addition to that, we also have several other projects that are currently in works, inclusive of producing our own public-facing dashboard. As we was a result from our DPS partnership, we realized that this was an outstanding item, and at that point it got brought to the forefront that we needed to expedite that. So please understand, in the background we have been working on our own public-facing dashboard in addition to other projects that we have in works. And so I do have Lieutenant Askew from our Police Technology Unit. I also have Mr. McGrath, who is standing in for Dr. Jonathan Kringen. He is under the weather, but he is from our research and planning team. And so I'll just pass the mic to them so they can give you a better understanding of what those challenges and hurdles are.
Thank you, Chief.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sheldon Askew. I'm a lieutenant with the Austin Police Department's Police Technology Unit. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. So as Chief Henderson mentioned, there are just certain software solutions the police department deploys that provide limitations with respect to compiling the data. Not only the data itself, but the timeline that the resolution obviously is asking us to do. There's also business practices in place that the department is going to have to work through in order to achieve exactly what the resolution is asking us to achieve. So there definitely are going to be those two limitations. And I'll drill down just real briefly on two. So one of the requests is for us to provide information as it pertains to individual calls. As everyone on the dais is aware, we have a CAD system, computer-aided dispatch system, as well as a records management system. Those two systems obviously operate on some level independently. There is some shared data, but a lot of that data set is manually entered by the end user, the officers on the street. Obviously, anytime you introduce the human element to transferring data, it's prone to errors. And so as a result, aligning those two data sets from two systems oftentimes presents a challenge to some degree. That's the first example. The second example is the digital timekeeping system, UKG. The Austin Police Department is currently deploying UKG, and we expect to have it up and running by April of next year, 2024. The issue, though, is that UKG does not present the granularity needed to satisfy some of the things in the resolution. In other words, there's a requirement in the resolution that would require us to provide granular data on overtime spent for officers working patrol, construction, and special events. Well, the police department can provide the rate of pay for those particular assignments, but drilling down on the actual assignment itself would require a business practice change that UKG obviously doesn't accommodate. So those are just two examples of several that exist in the resolution and the reasons why making a 30-day, meeting a 30-day requirement would be problematic.
And I appreciate that, and I think one of the reasons that I wanted to have this conversation is to set some expectations for what we can do and how quickly we can do it. And that's a great example. In other words, we're tracking overtime, but we're not kind of flagging each individual purpose of that overtime. With regard to, the first item that you mentioned, Lord, it slipped my mind, but anything else in particular that comes to the forefront in terms of concerns with the data or the timelines or anything like that?
Those are the two I'm prepared to talk about today, sir, but I'll pass it over to Rob if you have any other examples of things that would be problematic.
Hi, my name is Rob McGrath. I'm the Crime Intelligence Analyst Super. Oh, sorry.
Yes.
There you go.
Hi, I'm Rob McGrath. I'm the Crime Intelligence Analyst Supervisor overseeing patrol operations for APD. We get a lot of the requests from City Council or from public information requests, and a lot of we interpret the requests and do the research to get the answers for those requests. So just as an example, in June, we got a request about how many false alarms have we gone to in the last year? How long does it take for your officers to clear those calls? It's not cut and dry to be able to get those answers sometimes. It's not just pulling a spreadsheet and just tabulating at the end. I work closely with the research and planning team, and we, as a team, we collaborate into what are we actually trying to answer here. And in this particular case, from June 20th of 2022 to June 20th, 2023, there were 29,864 false alarm calls that we went to. But we have to do a lot more digging into that, because when officers go to calls, it may not start as a false alarm. It might start as something else. It might end as a false alarm, or we might get dispatched to a false alarm and it ends up being something else. So do you want to know how many it starts as, how many it ended as, what happened? And when asking how long does it take for officers to clear those calls? Well, it all depends on each individual one. Sometimes one officer goes, most of the time that's two. But sometimes it could be 3, 4, 5, or 6, depending on what's going on. And in each of those different scenarios, all those variables change, and it takes time for us to pull it apart because we can't just spread it out. So in this particular, just very simple request, or seemingly simple request, this was about 6 to 7 hour man hours for us as a team to be able to pull it apart, do the research, figure out what we need to do to answer it, and then put it back together. So, and that's just one example of one request.
Well, I appreciate those examples, and my understanding, again, with our conversations with the police department, were that, a lot of the data exists, but it might just be in the individual offense reports, or it might be, it's not tabulated where, you can just kind of click, 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 and there it is. So again, I understand that, and again, I just want to set the public's expectations for that this is a process, and
Councilmember, I just want to say that the comments by Ms. Mitchell earlier were inaccurate, or at least a mischaracterization. We do our best to comply with transparency, and we're happy to meet with her to tell her the complexity with this, so she's aware of that.
Anything else on the particular incidents or any other data concerns, and then the movement also? I would just add, this is another in the conversation that we're having, that y'all are moving to UKG right now. My understanding is that the current payroll practices are still paper based.
That's a correct statement, sir. They are.
So, again, it's really hard to pull overtime data and different kind of officer work data when, we're going to have to flip through the papers, piece by piece. I think the move to UKG and a digital time frame, even if it doesn't quite get us everything, all the granularity that we need, hopefully it will get us more information to be able to release to the public.
So one of the things I think needs to be stated, and I'd be remiss by not doing so, is we need to be crystal clear on the definitions, what the actual expectations are. There's verbiage inside the resolution that is open or subject to interpretation. And I'll give you an example. The unique case identifier, or case unique identifier, I think is the exact terminology used. It's my understanding you're looking for the case number. The problem with that lies in the fact that if you have a major event, you may have multiple people calling 911. Mm-hmm. Well, there's one case number that everything is potentially duped into, but is the request for all multiple case numbers? Is it for one singular case number? So again, there's a lot of nuance behind some of these terms and definitions. So we need clarity in order to abide by and meet the requirements in the resolution.
Understood, and I think that's an excellent example. And like I said, this is, I think, the start of a process to get that down. We've worked with PD, because again, there are terms of art that are used when we're talking about this, and we might be asking for something, but APD understands it in a different way. So we've tried to get the language just right, but again, it's a start of a process, and I just look forward to continuing to work with the department to get as much data out to the public as we can.
Thank you, Councilmember. Now that we've laid out this item, what I'm going to do is I'm going to recognize the speakers on the item, and then I will come back and I will recognize Councilmember Fuentes and then Councilmember Kelly on the item. So if we can, let's go to the speakers. And if they've already spoken as part of the previous list of speakers on item 132, we're just calling those when it was pulled that are listed for 132.
If I call your name, please come down to the front and then state your name at the podium. Julio Gonzalez Altamirano, followed by Chris Harris, followed by Meme Styles.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great.
Please don't touch it.
Thank you. You can't fly the plane without the instruments. My name is Julio Gonzalez Altamirano. 15 years ago, I was a public sector management consultant and I worked with a dozen police departments, including this one, to look at staffing and operations data. 2 years ago, I initiated a public information request around workload data that I still have not received a response to. I'm here to express my full and enthusiastic support for item 132. This item will save money by reducing enterprise friction. It will help address APD's PIR backlog. It will fight misinformation, and it will help your offices do their job. Starting with the 2024 council vintage, if you think about it, a two-term council member will vote on $4 billion of police spending. It makes sense to have some instrumentation on how to fly that plane. We can definitely afford to do this given the quantities involved, and because the core of this IFC is implemented by code and scripts to establish interoperability and the transfer of data, this is not ongoing operating expenses. This is very cheap, high ROI, capital expenses. It will deliver exemplary public value to the taxpayer. Back to basics. That's what we're about. These are the basics. You can't fly the plane without instruments. Thank you to Councilmember Vela for illuminating us on this issue, to the APD staff who have worked very hard, as well as to the other council members who are sponsoring this, including my council member from District 10, who is not here today, but I'm sure there's a good reason for that. Two little things. One, if you read the resolution, and I hope you did, there's a community advisory commission or advisory body suggested, which can solve a lot of the technical questions that have been addressed here. Two, there is a request to explore how we survey around underreporting. I got to tell you, when I talk to people on different sides of the issue, it bothers me greatly that people do not trust the chief's monthly report on crime because of the perception of underreporting. We can nip that in the bud with a suggestion in this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Chris Harris. I am in District 9. Thank you so much for the opportunity to address you today. Thank you, Councilman Vela, for this item. Thank you to the co-sponsors for putting it forward. This is highly needed information in the community. And again, I can't stress enough, we obviously have just seen an auditor report about the backlog of PIRs, particularly those related to police information. Obviously, that is a city issue, not a police department specific issue, but this information being put out publicly will really help to address that and future backlogs such that people can have access to the information that we sorely need and that you all as policymakers sorely need in order to make informed decisions about the operations of what constitutes the largest portion of the budget, the largest thing that you are allocating money towards each and every fiscal year. The other thing I'll say is that during the DPS partnership, disastrous DPS partnership, we repeatedly saw APD put out extremely dubious information, charts without dates, charts without data definitions, information that wouldn't pass muster in the undergrad stats class. And so having this information be produced in a format that anyone can access and utilize will greatly enhance trust in the information that we receive from the city about policing. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Mayor, City Council, and community. My name is Mimi Stiles. I just want to say that. I know I was called Meme, but it's Mimi Stiles. I'm the founder and president of Measure, a research and data activism organization that's been dedicated to the pursuit of data justice in the city for the last decade. Measure was awarded last year at South by Southwest as the nonprofit year of the year. And I also hold the key to this city. Our organization's mission aligns closely with the principles laid out in this resolution, and I'm here to advocate for it and for the Police Open Data Technical Advisory Committee included in the resolution. In addition to my leadership at Measure, I'm one of 6 national fellows with the Social Science Research Council, the Just Tech cohort. And as a person in tech, I can assure you right now that there are solutions to approve and deploy this resolution, especially in the city where we have the most brilliant tech minds. Right, they can solve these problems, these gaps. By supporting 132, we're reaffirming our commitment to getting to a place where we might at some point say that APD is evidence-based, right? And also data-driven. So let me say this, we're standing at a threshold of a future where open data empowers our community, where every single resident has access to accurate, up-to-date information regarding policing. But it's not just about data. This resolution is also about collaboration. It's about us as a community really coming together, forging a mandate of trust. We can't just say that we're building trust. We need to forge a mandate of trust. That's what we've learned over the last 10 years. And so by supporting this resolution, we're saying that this is a city where truth is the cornerstone of progress, Mayor. That's what we're saying. Imagine a future where our community is not only informed by actively engaging and shaping our law enforcement policies, but it's also working together. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Alicia Castillo. Following is Angela Carroll.
Ms. Castillo. Ms. Carroll. Saved you that.
Good morning. My name is Angel Carroll for the record. Thank you. As the Director of Advocacy at Measure, I have the honor of standing before you today to discuss an exciting opportunity for the city of Austin that I was born in. We often hear the phrase, knowledge is power, and never has it been truer than the context of our city's law enforcement. We understand that a thriving, just, and equitable city relies on the principles of transparency, accountability, and public trust. And it's with these principles in mind that I stand before you in support of Resolution 132, the release of open data pertaining to the Austin Police Department. The data release is not just about the numbers and statistics. It's about empowering our community with accurate, up-to-date, and easily accessible information regarding police activities. It's about every citizen having the tools that they need to engage actively with their law enforcement agency. Let Austin be the city that seizes this opportunity for positive change. Let Austin be the city that has improved community relations and enhances public safety. Thank you.
That concludes all of the speakers for item 132.
Thank you. I'll recognize Councilmember Vela for a motion on item number 132.
Move passage.
Councilmember Vela moves to adopt. It is seconded by Councilmember Fuentes. Item number 132. I'll now recognize Councilmember Fuentes to speak on the item and also for a proposed amendment.
Thank you, and thank you, Councilmember Vela, for bringing forward this item. Colleagues, the motion sheet in front of you really is just language that brings in line other data requests and data needs that we have as a community. This data information that's outlined is part of the Freedom City policy that the City of Austin passed a number of years ago. It has already been a council policy. It's already been directed, and since we are initiating the dashboard collection of information, I just want to ensure that this information is also captured.
Great, thank you. Members, any questions of Councilmember Fuentes on the proposed amendment? Councilmember Fuentes moves adoption of the proposed amendment to item number 132. It is seconded by Councilmember Qadri. old habits grow. It takes a long time for old habits to go away. In the legislature, that is a no vote. And every time I look over at Councilmember Carter, he's voting no on something. But I'm getting you. You saw I caught up with you there. Councilmember Carter moves adoption of the proposed amendment, seconds the adoption of the proposed amendment. Is there any objection to the adoption of the proposed amendment to item number 132? There being no objection, the motion to amend is adopted with 3 council members that have been previously identified off the dais. Councilmember Kelly, I'll now recognize you to speak on item number 132 as amended.
Thank you. I've often reflected on the resolutions that council brings forward and thought that we as a council and as a community could benefit from 2 key items associated with each resolution before we vote on them. Those 2 things are a potential fiscal impact statement and a projected estimation of staff time to complete the resolution and its goals. So that said, I have several questions related to this item I'd like to have answered before we take a vote. Thank you.
Go for it.
Okay. Well, so for staff.
By the way, that rain really wasn't brought by you. You just proved that.
Maybe the city manager can answer this. What do you see as resources that might be needed in order to accomplish the many objectives proposed in this resolution?
I think the way the resolution is written, we're given between now and December to come back in December. So in December, we'll have a resource plan as well as some of the issues that we'll need to be addressing. And we intend to sit down and continue to work with Councilmember Vela's office and Councilmember Fuentes and anyone else who wants to work with us to make sure that we've got the specifics. And so I think that you'll have that presented to you at the right time in December. I think the last meeting is 14 December or something like that.
Okay, so my next question is what resources or initiatives would need to be pulled from other priorities to accomplish the goals in this resolution?
For what now?
What do you have to pull?
Yeah, what would you have to stop doing or pause doing to make this work?
Well, you have enough flexibility in a budget when you're asked to go get a project. We'll simply reassign folks to take this as a higher priority than something else they're working on. But that's not. We get as you may know, we get a number of these resolutions every week, and it does sometimes have to scramble us to try to figure out how we address those. And we're constantly shifting resources to try to be able to address council's priorities.
Is the chief available to answer that question?
Well, I mean, she can. I'm not sure she's going to say anything different than I just said, but.
Mayor, I did have a quick comment on that. We also, this budget that we just approved, added an additional 4 individuals to the department to help fulfill
But when
this
you did the
request.
budget, we weren't anticipating this, council member. I mean,
Right.
you do have the resources, but I'm just saying that it may require some shifting of resources. That's just a reality.
It's like the operation of any business.
Yeah. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. I'm just saying that sometimes that's what's required. Right, Chief?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember Kelly, you have a question of the chief.
So I was just going to ask what things or priorities or initiatives would need to be put on hold in order to make this resolution come to fruition.
Yes, Councilmember Kelly, thank you for the question. Please know that we do have just standard operations that we're currently in progress. We don't get to put those on pause. In addition to Lieutenant Askew mentioned the UKG system and integration, and that's going to be a unique lift just for our department, just because the type of shifts that our officers work and the variances in our pay scales. In addition to that, I did mention that our team was currently working on a public-facing dashboard, and understand we're just going to have to shift based on this resolution. But as a city manager stated, we'll be prepared in December to have a more robust and outlined items that we'll need in order to fulfill the resolution.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll just finish up here. I'm not against any additional data being given to us, and I'm not against more transparency in the city, but I do feel very uncomfortable given the backlog of current public information requests at the police department and the fact that this is outside of a budget session for us to be considering, because I do strongly feel like there will be additional resources needed at APD to fulfill this and to fix the backlog of public information requests there. And I know that's something you're working on currently. If we had done this, or if it was proposed in a phased approach or something similar to where we weren't just fulfilling it all at once, I think I could be more in agreement to
Yeah, and
it.
you noticed through the audit, not just about this, but the public information request in general, we get we get a whole host of those and a whole number. So we've got, and I know that Ann and other parts of the department are working on those, and it is it's a huge quantity, and so we've got to get a way to get a handle on it.
Yeah,
and we know that.
I have this article from the Austin Chronicle that says that we're behind 20,000 public information requests, and I just strongly feel that adding additional responsibilities to staff currently at APD is going to put a lot worse strain on them, and I want to figure out what's going on there before we start adding additional duties. But I do think that this data is important when we're able to figure that out. So I will be voting no today on this item. Thank you.
Councilmember Vela?
Chief, and this may actually be more appropriate for Lieutenant Askew, but what percentage of those 20,000 pending open records requests are involving kind of publicly facing data, or data that could be available on the dashboard? Just out of curiosity, I know that it wasn't broken down as far as I'm aware, but any sense of that?
Councilmember Vela, I could not speak to the specific breakdown in those public information requests. Now, I can state just through the audit that there is a lot of information that would not require a PIR, or either there would be a process in place explaining how to access that same information via the dashboard once it's stood up and there's public access to it. So that's the best that I can say, but for a specific number, I'm not in a position to do that, sir. Lieutenant Askew, did you have anything to add related?
No, ma'am.
And I appreciate that. And again, my thinking would be that in the future, when you do get a public information request for, let's say, the number of thefts in this area or whatever the case may be, you can just email them back and be like, here's a dashboard, go ahead and just click, and that's again, so I think this could be a resource, ultimately a resource saving type of.
That won't work, but not under Public Information Act request.
Not to belabor the point, but under the law, we can't just say, go look at the dashboard. If they want us to produce the information, we have to produce it. So there are two different things going on. So that backlog we hope to get resources put in place to take care of those public information requests, but it is a little separate from what you're doing here today.
Okay, Councilmember Codry, the Mayor Pro Tem, and okay, Mayor Pro Tem, and then I'll call Councilmember Codry.
I was just going to state, I appreciate that maybe the public information answer can't be that, but I would hope that if we have transparency in some of these dashboards, that the public information request isn't necessary because the information is readily available. So I know this may be kind of a steep curve of trying to get this information up and running, because we know the information the department has been able to share with us in the past is usually a compilation of what was handled by APD, what might be handled by a sheriff's office, just so we can understand that the information may not be compiled the same way on intake, but then it has to be compiled differently for it to be shared publicly. But I hope that we can get to a place where almost all of our departments have the same transparency that we would see, for instance, with budgeting, where you can click through and see every bucket of money and every department and sub-department within them. So I hope in the effort of accountability and transparency that this ultimately will smooth the process.
Councilmember Codry, and then members, without objection, we'll go to a vote so we can take up a couple of these other items before the noon time certain.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make it really quick. I just want to thank Councilmember Vela for bringing this item forward. I just wanted to be added as a co-sponsor to the item.
Fair enough. Anything else? All right, members, the motion is to adopt the item 132 as amended. Without objection, the item is adopted with Councilmember Kelly being shown voting no, and 3 members previously identified off the dais. Let me ask a question of the city clerk. Item number 88, 89, and 90, are there any people signed up to speak?
No.
Council members,